Now I watched when the Lamb opened one of the seven seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures say with a voice like thunder, "Come!" And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and his rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. And he opened the second seal, and I heard the second living creature say, "Come!" And it came out another horse, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that his people should slay one another. And he was given a great sword. So that's war right there. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature saying, "Come!" And I looked, and behold, a black horse, and its rider had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. And do not harm the oil and the wine." So this is famine right here. This is things being too expensive to buy basic food. When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice and the fourth living creature saying, "Come!" And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed him. And they were given authority over a fourth of the earth to kill with the sword, with famine, with pestilence, and with wild beasts of the earth. When he opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for the witnesses that they had borne. They cried out with a loud voice, "O sovereign Lord, holy and true, how long will you judge and avenge the blood on those who dwell on the earth?" They were each given a white robe and told to rest a little longer until the number of the fellow servants and the brothers should be complete, who were to be killed as they themselves had been. So these are the Christians who have died in the faith, those who died specifically because they were Christian, not just because they died for pestilence, but they died because they were Christian, and because it's not yet the last day. They're given white robes, and they're told to wait until all the Christians can be gathered up into heaven. Remember, Jesus talks about separating the wheat and the tares, and he waits until the harvest to do it. He doesn't rip out the wheat or rip out the tares until it's time for the harvest. When he opened the sixth seal, I looked, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth. The moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell to the earth as the fig tree sheds its winter fruit when shaken by a gale. The sky vanished like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and every island was removed in its place. Then the kings of the earth, and the great ones, and the generals, and the rich, and the powerful, and everyone, slave and free, hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks and the mountains, calling to the mountains and the rocks, "Fall and hide us from the face of him who is seated on the throne, from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of the wrath has come, and who can stand?" So, stuff like that hasn't happened yet, but the understanding is that the last day will come. There will be specific signs. Jesus talks about this in Matthew chapter 24 a little bit more directly. There's a lot of language that's used in Revelation that's more poetic. That doesn't mean it's not accurate, but that does mean that it has to be understood with more delicacy. So the Bible regularly uses poetry to talk about historical things. You guys use it too. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Right, that's a poem, but it's also the date when Columbus was sailing on the ocean. So we use, just because something's poetic doesn't mean that it's not true. It doesn't even mean that it's not true literally, but it means that we have to understand what the poem brings to the text. So when Jesus talks about the last days, in chapter 24, chapter 24, Jesus left the temple and was going away when his disciples came to point out to him the building of the temple. But he answered them. So it's interesting. I think in another gospel, you're going to say, "Jesus, look at how beautiful this temple is. Isn't this a wonderful building?" And Jesus answered him, "You see all these, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will not be left one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." Now this is interesting because Jesus is not talking about the last day in the sense of last day of the earth. He's actually talking about the last day of the temple here. In the sack of Jerusalem, I'm trying to remember, is it Kokhbar's rebellion? I don't remember who it is. Basically, some Jewish guy leads a bunch of the Jewish people to rebel against Rome. Rome is not having it because they're a military power, so they fight back. This is exactly what the Jewish people were afraid Jesus was going to do. They fight back, and they absolutely destroy the Jewish people in Rome. This happens sometime in the first century, I think, first or second century. What was that?
They ruined their temple?
They ruined their temple, yes. Now, what was in the temple? Do you remember? Just some things that were in the temple?
Ark of the Covenant.
The Ark of the Covenant was lost between, I believe,
Babylon.
Yeah, it was lost around Babylon. Yeah, so I think they are. But there were candlesticks, there was golden bowls, there was precious metals everywhere. So this is the rebuilt temple. The temple was destroyed with Babylon. The Ark of the Covenant was lost. And with the new temple, there's still a lot of precious metals. So when they came in and they wiped out the Jewish people as much as they could, they didn't get everybody, obviously. They burned the temple. They set fire to the temple. The temple is a big stone building with lots of precious metal in it. What happened is everything got so hot that the precious metal melted, the gold melted, and went between the cracks of the stone. So what they would do, how would you get at gold that is between the cracks of the stone? You tear the stones down. So not one stone was left on another because it was literally torn down all the way to the ground just to see if they could get all the precious metal that melted between. Now, they've since tried to rebuild some of the walls and stuff like that, but this is literally true, what Jesus is saying. Not one stone is left on another because they were taking it apart to get everything between the stones. Now, he continues, verse 3, so chapter 24, Matthew 24, verse 3. As he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be, and when will the signs of the coming and the close of the age?" And Jesus answered them, "See that no one leads you astray, for many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and they will lead many astray." And you can think historically, this has happened quite a few times. I can think of, who's that guy in Japan a little while back? Do you remember it was probably in the 90s, the Tokyo, the subway, where they released gas on the subway. Do you know what I'm talking about? Sarin gas, that's right, yeah. If I remember right, it was a cult led by a Japanese guy he was a blind guy. He claimed to be Jesus himself. He claimed to be the Christ, and this is how he got people to follow him. And the Japanese cult members, they brought sarin gas in kind of packages on the subway, and they put them on the ground. They all had umbrellas, and they broke the packages with the umbrellas, and this is how they released the gas in the subway. Horrible terrorist attack in Japan, but this is just one of the instances of people claiming to be Christ. David Koresh, do you know that name, David Koresh? David Koresh claimed kind of to be Christ. He claimed to be a Christ. He was one of the Branch Davidians. If you know the name Waco, you probably know the name Waco because of David Koresh and his group, the Branch Davidians. So there's many people who have come and claimed to be Christ over the years. The Bab from the B-A-B from the Baha'i religion claimed to be a Christ, things like that. So you'll hear of wars and rumors of wars. All right, so pay attention to this section. Let me know if this section is happening right now. So you will hear of many false Christs. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Is that going on today? Okay. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation. Is that happening yet? And kingdom against kingdom. Is that happening yet? And there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. Yes, this continues to happen. All of these are but the beginning of the birth pains. So this is not an indication that the end of the world is today. This is an indication that this is happening. It is progressing. The problem is that there have been wars and rumors of wars and famines and earthquakes and things like this going on since Christ was crucified. I mean, for a long time. This is kind of the point that we have been living in the last days for a long time. Now, again, as I read in Revelation, things will get a lot crazier before they get a lot better. All right, verse 9. Again, think if this also applies to today, or if this is something that hasn't happened yet to Christians. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Gee, is Christianity hated publicly by quite a few people? Absolutely. Different religions, but also different. I mean, even in the United States, as much as they can get away with it, the media hates you. Hollywood depicting movies of Christians is very rarely makes it look good. You've got Mel Gibson, Passion of the Christ, that sort of thing. But that's an outlier. Most of the depictions of Hollywood, when you of the media, when you turn on TV or songs, are mocking. This is also the case. Other religions hate Christianity. Yes, so verse 10, hey, we'll be hated for my name's sake. So you're hated not or specifically because you're Christian. Verse 10, and then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. No, that's absolutely happened. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. Now, has that happened? Have there been any people claiming to be prophets in the last, let's say, couple hundred years, few centuries? Well, Muhammad in 650 AD? I don't remember. I think it's 7th century. Maybe it's 6th century. I get it. It's around then. It's before 1,000. He showed up and he claimed to be a prophet. Now, this guy was very confused. He was concerned that he was being led on by demons, which I think he probably was. And he was convinced by somebody else, no, those aren't demons. This is actually an angel talking to you. So the prophet Muhammad called himself a prophet. He really wasn't. And he tried to lead people away from Christianity. He would say, you are all people of the book. I am a person of the book too. God has just given me a little bit more information than he's given you. Why don't you follow me and we'll continue the story that the Bible didn't finish. He tried that and many have followed him since. Likewise, Mormonism, likewise, Christian Science, likewise, Jehovah's Witness, likewise, Seventh-day Advent, so on and so forth. There's so many people who've claimed to be prophets who speak for, and this is not just these big, these groups that are often considered cults, but there are also groups like, have you heard of, I've talked about this before, have you heard of the NAR? The New Apostolic Reformation. Have you heard about this? I will never stop picking on these guys. You remember when you used to turn on TV and you turn it over to TBN or whatever the channel is called? I remember seeing these people and they've got golden thrones. The Pope himself doesn't have a throne as wonderful as these. And these guys would say, you send me your money and and you will get a blessing and a seed offering and you will be wealthy and you will be healed, and basically send me money and all of your richest desires will come true. These guys. This has been going on for a while. They're usually prosperity preachers, but particularly there's a group, and this includes Bethel, Elevation, Hillsong, Joel Osteen, I don't know if Creflo Dollar. I think he's just a straight up scam artist. Creflo Dollar. His whole shtick is that God made him rich. So if you send him money, God will make you rich too. I wonder how he got rich. Put two and two together. I forget this one guy, I forget his name. I'd know it if I heard it. He says that if you have any sort of sickness, that this is because you don't have enough faith, that you need to keep giving him money and have more faith so all your diseases and everything can be cured. This guy who also happens to need to wear glasses and whose wife had cancer and died says that if you have sickness, it's because you aren't giving him enough money. So that scam doesn't work. But there's a group called the New Apostolic Reformation, and their constant refrain is, well, God laid this on my heart. God told me, I feel like God is leading me to ... And then they just insert whatever they want to get you to keep following them. Usually it's stupid, silly phrases like, there is going to be, God told me a prophecy, a word for this month is regeneration, and God is going to give regenerations into your heart, and God is going to make suddenlies appear in your life. Words like this, where sentences don't make sense, God is going to give you a suddenly. It's not how grammar works, but this is a word they use, and it's a huge racket. It's a huge scam. But this is modern day people claiming to be prophets. A prophet is someone who claims to have a word from God. Now, to a degree, you guys are all prophets when you open the Bible and you read out what God says, because God has given you his word right here. And this is prophecy in a degree, but what they are claiming is that they are a special person that God talks to one-on-one like Moses on the mountain. Hebrews 1, verse 1 and 2 lets us know that office of prophet no longer exists. Long ago and in many times, in many ways, God spoke to his people of old by the prophets, but now in these last days he has spoken to us by his Son, Jesus Christ. So that's Hebrews chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. The office of prophet no longer exists like it used to. So Joseph Smith, his office does not exist, the office of prophet. But that's only if you are paying attention to what the Bible says. People are led astray by not knowing what the Bible says. All right, verse 11, and many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. True. Verse 12, and because lawlessness will be increased, the love for many will grow cold. Have you noticed, maybe if you've gone on the internet, how easy it is to hate people? How easy it is to pick fights and be angry with people? Facebook, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Verse 13, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the world as a testimony to all nations. And then the end will come. So Jesus lays out all of these horrible things that are going to happen, all these trials and tribulations. But through it all, he says, yet those who have faith will be saved. As bad as things get on the earth, if you have faith, you will be saved. And not only that, but the gospel of Christ, the gospel that saves you, is going to go out to the whole world. This is not just going to be a singular, just Jerusalem, just America, just, a small portion of people. But rather, and this is also what we see the Bible being translated into countless languages, so many languages. I've shown you my Jesus book before. Have I shown you this? This is my favorite translation of the Bible. Not because it's the most accurate, but because it's the most interesting. Da Jesus book. Da Jesus book. Sounds like a joke, right? Da Jesus book. If you read the text, it looks almost like it's English. It'll say something like, "Dis what the Bible say, Abraham when trust God, das why God when say that Abraham get him right with him." Okay, it sounds like bad English, but it's not. What this is a language. This is called Pidgin. It's very simplified English. Particularly, you see the Hawaiian Islands right here. Particularly, this is Hawaiian Pidgin. There are other countries that have a version of English that's very simplified. If you have a bunch of different towns and each town speaks a completely different language, the solution is you have a very simple language that everybody can learn and communicate. And that simplified language is usually called Pidgin. So Papua New Guinea also has a version of Pidgin. So do other countries as well. But how accurate is this? It's pretty good. I would say it's probably, let's say, NIV accurate. So there's some things that I would change, but there's some phrases in here that I really like that explain things better than English. This is just the New Testament. The Old Testament they're still working on when I bought that. So it'll say the word, it doesn't have the word prophet in the language. It says, "the people that talk for God." Well, that's what a prophet is. It's a person who talks for God. That makes sense to me. So when we hear the word prophet, maybe we get confused because this is a special word. But to them, they use the sentence, "the people that talk for God," and they understand it. So there is some benefit to it. Yes, ma'am.
I may have interrupted, but
No.
I was going to ask, have we reached everybody everywhere?
Have we reached everybody everywhere?
Is that like the Bible study? Yeah.
I don't know. There's always work ongoing. There's always new translations being made for tribal dialects in particular. You'll never run out of tribal dialects to keep translating the Bible into, it seems. In Africa, South America, I mean, there's still uncontacted tribes in the Amazon. We know this for a fact because people are specifically not contacting them. So no, I think that there's still some people out there that haven't heard about Christ. There is there's an island it's known for being an island of uncontacted cannibals.
Is that the one where they attack and eat the people that try to...
Yes. And there was a guy, and you're not allowed to go to the island because they don't have the immune system that can handle all of our diseases and common colds and stuff. So if we went to that island, it could potentially kill them all. And there have been a couple of attempts of missionaries to go to that island. As far as I know, none of them have survived, if they've actually made it onto the island. But there have been some attempts, and they're illegal. I think it's off Australia or New Zealand, somewhere in that area. So there are still groups that need to hear about Christ.
Now, but it used to be that, I can't remember what people are called, but up in the hills in Kentucky.
Oh, in Kentucky?
Still up?
Oh, the Appalachians?
Yeah, a lot of those people they didn't breed, they didn't know.
Yeah.
But do you think they've been informed now?
I think so. I mean, in Appalachia, there's the gospel is present, even without literacy.
Almost sounds like theirs.
Yeah, well, even without literacy, there are ways to spread the gospel, and I mean, this is one reason that we really like depictions, because if I show you this, even if you don't speak any language, you at least know, okay, that's obviously a person, and it's probably a specific person. What's that on his head? What's he doing? He doesn't look like he's alive. And I can start to tell you a story using pictures. So literacy helps, but it isn't necessary. I mean, this is why we have so many pictures with like the kids' Bibles and stuff like that in Sunday school. Yes, ma'am.
Well, now with President Trump, I mean, he's trying to bring God back into our nation.
Yeah.
Do you think that, I mean, there's a lot of people in this nation that never had heard it and don't know what's going on. But if they're listening and reading about everything, do you think that they're finally hearing?
I think that God works through all kinds of means. So whether somebody has good theology or not, I think God can actually work through means. There are some examples of people specifically trying the opposite. So I bring this up. Has anybody read the Gulag Archipelago? Alexander Solzhenitsyn? No? Yes? Maybe. Years ago. I mean, it is a big book, and it's a depiction of the people in Russia, Siberia, who went to the gulags. Now, there's a lot of Christians over there, and communism, one of the goals of communism, socialism, was to stamp out Christianity. So it would bring these people into the gulags, and the point was, we're going to break their Christian faith. But by arguing with these Christians, by trying to break their faith, by trying to squash Christianity, a lot of the guards end up being converted. And this has happened multiple times. I mean, Paul was in prison. This is one of the earliest examples. Paul is in prison because he's being a Christian. Well, in prison, trying to stop Christianity ends up making Christianity spread. And this is actually what we see historically. Now, it's good to be an evangelist, to go out and to spread the gospel. But it's also interesting that the points in history that have had the greatest Christian growth are the points in history that have had the greatest Christian persecution. In the early church, so after the book of Revelation, well, around the time the book of Revelation was written, after the book of Revelation, Christianity was legal because it was considered a subsect of Judaism, which was a legal religion in Rome. But then afterwards, Christianity basically was being defined as this is a different religion. Well, you couldn't just make up a religion in Rome. Your religion had to be government approved, which is a wild concept, but still exists. So Christianity was illegal in Rome. So what would the Christians do? Well, the Christians would be persecuted. Nero would take the Christians. He blamed them for the fire. And he would take them and he would burn them at the stake, use them as torches to light the path during his banquets. Him and other ones would throw them in the Colosseum. They'd be eaten by the lions and killed by the gladiators. They'd be killed on public display. And the problem is, the more you kill Christians, the more Christians start showing up. The more people in the crowd start looking and saying, that guy didn't fight back. Why was that guy willing to die for his faith? And there's a lot of examples we have of famous Christians who die. I'm going to get the names mixed up. Justin Martyr was one of them, which is a great last name. If you're going to be killed for your faith, your last name is Martyr. There's one of them, I don't remember. It might have been him. It might have been somebody else. It was kind of the Colosseum type. You've got the Romans, and they said, we've got 1,000 gods, and you only worship God. You know what that makes you? An atheist. Because we have all the gods, and you deny that all the gods exist, except for this Jesus guy, so you are an atheist. And the accusation against the Christian was that he was an atheist, and his response was basically, takes one to know one. There's a lot of last remarks of Christian martyrs that, true or not, they're kind of that last jab. St. Lawrence is my favorite. They're grilling him. They're burning him on a metal grill, and they're cooking him to death. And his last words are, flip me over, I'm done on this side. Another Christian martyr, I forget his name, basically it was death by 1,000 cuts for him, so they cut him again and again and again to make him bleed out. And his words were, when I came here, I only had one mouth to proclaim the gospel of Christ, but you've given me 1,000 mouths to shout out the glory of God. So people see the deaths of Christians and they're inspired. God uses even persecution of Christianity as a way for Christianity to grow. This is something that we see in Islam. This is something that we see in China. China's very heavily they persecute Christianity, but there's underground Christian churches. There are Christians that meet together in secret. In Rome, in the time of after the Bible, Christians would meet together literally underground in catacombs. They didn't have church buildings to go to. And then after they weren't allowed to meet in synagogues anymore, they had to meet in houses or in secret. They would have all kinds of secret handshakes and ways to indicate that they're Christian. This is where, I love this. This is called the ichthys, this fish. That means, ichthys means, like an ichthyologist is somebody who studies fish. That's a iota, that's a Chi Rho, that's a theta. That's is an upsilon, and that's a sigma. So the I stands for Jesus, Jesus. Christos, that's the X. Theos, God. Huios, Son. And I forget what the S stands for, but basically it stands for God's own Son. Jesus Christ, God's own Son. But the interesting thing about the ichthys is that this symbol here, if you only took half the symbol, if you just had one swoop like that, this used to be a signal that Christians would give to each other in the catacombs. So if I think you're a Christian, and I'm a Christian, and I want to indicate to you, hey, maybe we're in the same club, I would maybe draw on the floor, just kind of a swoop with my foot. Oh, I'm just, putting my toe in the dirt. Nothing out of the ordinary there. But if you see that, and your return to the secret handshake would be to complete the fish symbol by taking one swoop, and then another swoop, and you've got the fish symbol, now you've indicated that you are secretly a Christian as well. So Christianity was meeting in secret and growing in secret during persecution. So whether it's being promoted, and really the best way to promote Christianity is evangelism. It's not trying to make it, trying to force people to believe. That's never a biblical process, but it's to spread the gospel. Whether we try to spread the gospel or whether somebody tries to stop the gospel, God will spread the gospel. God will create faith in Christians. It's an interesting pattern that we see throughout history. Any other questions?
I was going to say there's
Yes.
a magazine out, The Voice of the Martyrs, if you've never seen it. And it tells you modern day Christians that all over the world that have died for Christ and are still trying to get the word of Christ out. It's The Voice of the Martyrs. To this day there are still people.
Yeah, it's not just an ancient thing. It's not just we have. Do you guys remember? Was it 20? It was like 21 or 27 Christians murdered on the beach in what country? It was in the Middle East somewhere. There's icons. So that's called an icon. It's a depiction of something that happened in the Bible. There's icons of saints. It's basically a painting to remember that somebody died for the Christian faith. And there's icons of the Christian martyrs on the beach. And I don't remember. I don't remember what country it was in. I don't remember if it was the Taliban or who it was, or Al Qaeda. But they basically just beheaded a bunch of people because they found out that they were Christian. And so now there's paintings of these guys to say, look at these people who were willing to die for their faith. They were not willing to renounce their faith. I've told you guys before sometimes the story of the 4-year-old boy Andrew in Iraq. And I'm not going to get into it because I'm going to get all choked up every time I tell the story. But essentially, Andrew was a 4-year-old boy who died for the Christian faith when I was in Iraq. And I knew him. And that led me to really taking the faith seriously, saying, what did this little boy know that I didn't know? The faith of a child. I didn't understand this faith of a child concept that Jesus talks about. What possessed a little 4-year-old boy to be willing to die for the faith? Because when I was 4, I was scared of stuff. Monsters under the bed, the dark, that kind of thing. And yet this boy was not scared of people who were going to kill him. And so they killed him for the faith. He's a martyr, dying, proclaiming the faith. And as a result of that, I started studying the Bible more and more. Then eventually I went to seminary, and now here I am teaching Bible study, all because, partially because one little boy refused to give up the faith when he was at gunpoint. So God works through martyrs, and he still has martyrs today. There are still Christian martyrs today. Sometimes you don't hear about them as much. Sometimes, here's where I guarantee you'll hear about it. Every Easter and every Christmas. Every Easter and every Christmas, Boko Haram, someone in Africa, someone in the Middle East, they will storm into a church, they will shoot up the church, they will burn down the church, they will kill people with machetes every single Easter, every single Christmas, and these Christians keep meeting together anyway. You can't stop the Christians from meeting together, even though they know that they're going to be targeted every Christmas and every Easter. Next Christmas or Easter, I challenge you to please go online, look to see if anybody has attacked a church in the Middle East or Africa, because it is guaranteed to happen every single year, every year. But we rarely hear about it because that's over there, and we're comfortable here. Let me keep reading. Yes, ma'am.
When you were talking about the icons.
Yes.
So in the Prince of Egypt,
Yeah.
I like that, and I like that, where they show he's walking along and they show the babies being dumped in the river.
Mhm.
Is that something? Is there really a depiction in the life of these things where the babies were drowned?
Yes. So there's a couple of there's a parallel there. So there are depictions of the killing of the Israelite children in Egypt. There are icons of that. They're going to be less common, obviously, than the Last Supper or the crucifixion, but there are icons if you look for them. There's also icons and paintings. If you don't like the icon style, the normal, the kind of like the Egyptian, there's specific styles. If you prefer a more realistic painting, one of my favorite paintings, I forget who did it. We used a part of it for the Festival of the Holy Innocents this year, but it's the Slaughter of the Holy Innocents by Herod in Bethlehem. And there are some gruesome paintings. There are, Roman soldiers stomping babies to death, ripping them out of their mother's arms, piling them up. There's all these horrible, horrible depictions. But yeah, yes ma'am.
But maybe at the time it was happening.
At the time,
like painting on the wall, like
I
stuff that archaeologists.
would expect maybe, but I don't know that they would have, I don't think that the Egyptians would necessarily have painted that. Because they carve things into stone, then they paint it over the carved stone. That's what the hieroglyphs are. That's why they survived that long. But in terms of the paintings that we have from that area, we just don't have very many paintings. You're painting on...
Painting on the wall, the hieroglyphic stuff is what...
Right, yeah, the hieroglyphics probably wouldn't record that. Hieroglyphics usually recorded conquests. So they wouldn't record defeats. They would record conquests. They would record things about the king being, the king stopped. If there was something about the plagues, it would be the king stopping the plagues single-handedly. But they wouldn't have recorded that. There might have been some writing about that somewhere, but in terms of the paintings, the depictions, maybe the Israelites would have done that. I don't see why not. I think if they're teaching history, I think that they definitely could have taught that to kids by drawing, drawing on papyrus or vellum or something like that. But as far as we know, we don't have icons dating back thousands and thousands of years. It would be just really hard to preserve. Just physically, they would degrade by now. And the ones on the walls, the Egyptians kind of only painted their victories. There are some indications of some paintings on the wall that do indicate some of the things that happened during the Exodus. But it's interesting that they're kind of painted. If I understand, there's one series where it basically talks about the Pharaoh is great and he's got this great army and all this other stuff. And then the next one, Pharaoh's army isn't there anymore, and he's just talking about how he's still taking care of his crops or something like that. It just doesn't mention it, but suddenly he no longer has his army. And if you read it, according to this is the Pharaoh of the Exodus, that you know what happened to his army. But the Pharaoh is not going to say, well, my army was conquered in battle. He's going to talk about the good stuff that happened. So I've got 50,000 men, and then the next painting is going to be, me and my 20,000 men did a good job farming this year. That's just the way history is often recorded by the victors. Everybody considers himself... Well, they wanted to immortalize themselves as... Pharaohs considered themselves gods, not just kings. They wanted to immortalize themselves as good and everything. All right, let me see if there's anything else in Matthew 24. Abomination and desolation. Okay, so when you see the abomination of... So verse 15, Matthew 24, verse 15. When you see the abomination of desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in his house. Let the one who is in the field not turn back and get his cloak. And alas, for women who are pregnant and those who are nursing infants in those days, pray that your flight may not be in winter or the Sabbath, for then there will be great tribulation, such as there has never been from the beginning of the world until now, and never will be. And in those days, if those days had not been cut short, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you beforehand. So if they say to you, look, he is in the wilderness, do not go out. If they say, look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and shines in the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. So there's a couple of things. So there's a historical event that happens when the temple is overthrown and the people are basically put to death. There's a bunch of really bad stuff that happens to them. A lot of people connect this prophecy with that event, that this is the persecution of the people in Israel at that time. They'll be slaughtered basically. And it'll be worse for those with children. I think there were stories of the mothers. Basically, they have to starve their children, or some mothers even ate their children. It was just so bad. is that, I'm trying to remember if this is at Masada. I don't remember if that's, because there's a place in the Middle East called Masada, and the Romans basically besieged it, and the Israelites, or the Jewish people held out there for a couple of years, and the Romans, it was on top of a mountain, and then the Romans couldn't get up the mountain and break down the gate, so what they did is they built this huge ramp. If you see it, most of the ramp is still there in person. You can actually see the remains of the Roman camps to this day. You can see the squares where they were laid out, but they built this huge ramp up, and they came in and they killed everybody who was hiding in Herod's palace in Masada. But I think this was part of kind of the persecution of these people trying to kill all of them.
Didn't most of the Jews up there kill themselves?
Most of the Jews up there, yeah, most of the Jews up there did kill themselves. And this is talking about how horrible this would be. So either you're going to be killed from other people, or you're basically going to starve, or you're going to die, or really bad stuff happened. Yes, okay, let me throw a little gospel in here at the end. Now, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. This sounds familiar, like Revelation. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds in heaven with power and great glory. He will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call. They will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heaven to the other. So everybody on earth knows when Jesus returns. There is no, well, Jesus returned in Australia, let's go and check it out. No. If Jesus came back, everybody knows. There is no confusion. It is absolutely 100% clear when Jesus returns. Let me see if I can just finish up this chapter before we run out of time completely. I'm going to skip forward to verse 36. But concerning that day and the hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. So Jesus at this point, this is a confusing verse. Jesus is God. God knows everything. Jesus restricts himself in some degrees. You don't see Jesus shining with the full glory of God all the time. He does during the transfiguration. Jesus doesn't always use his full power, and this is one of the verses that he's restricting his power. So right now, he says, only the Father knows. I'm not going to tell you the time. I have restricted that information for myself. I don't know how that works. God is God. For as the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day when Noah entered his ark, and they were unaware until the flood swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then two men will be in the field, and one will be taken, and one will be left. Okay, pay attention really closely to this verse. These verses are usually used for the rapture. Two women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken, and one will be left. Therefore, stay awake, for you do not know what day the Lord is coming. But know that if the master of the house had known what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake, would have not let his house be broken into. Therefore, all of you must be ready for the Son of Man, who is coming at an hour you do not expect. All right, and then it goes on. Then he tells the parable, the 10 virgins, which really fits, because they don't know when the bridegroom is coming. But one thing that was invented, I think it's in the 1800s, late 1800s, was this idea of the rapture. Nobody in history ever believed in the rapture until the past century or two. It's a very recent doctrine. The people have come up with it is not biblical at all. The idea is that a bunch of Christians will be brought up to heaven and everybody else on the earth will just kind of have to suffer on the earth. And they use these verses as a proof text. But if you actually read the verses carefully, it talks about the flood. The flood comes and sweeps them away when they're not paying attention. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. So then two men will be in the field, one will be taken and one will be left. Well, during the flood, and when the flood happens, who is taken? Who is taken in the flood? Is it, well, no, I mean, who is taken away in the flood is what I'm trying to say. Is it the people on the ark or is it the people out of the ark? It's the people out of the ark. So if you want to say that these verses apply to God is going to take all the Christians to heaven, that's not what it's saying. This verse is saying in the end times, God is going to take out a bunch of if you want to say I'm the one who's in the field will be taken by God first, that's not a good thing. God took away the people during the flood by the water. The people who were prepared were inside the ark at that time. Anyways, I don't have time to get into all the nonsense of the rapture doctrine. Suffice it to say, and I can talk about this more one-on-one if you'd like later on, the rapture is not a Christian concept. It's something that was invented later on. It is not biblical. It is contrary to what the Bible says will happen. the rapture, this belief that the Christians are going to be secretly taken to heaven and all the unbelievers are going to survive on the earth for 1,000 years or something like that, not remotely biblical. Not according to any of the texts we read today especially. But with that, let's close with the doxology.